Hey guys, it is Lucid, and we are going to be doing a video on generic summons that you can get. And we're going to be looking at them to answer a few questions. Which are the ones which are good for sieging, which are the ones that are good for patrolling, and which are the ones that are good for combat. And fortunately, to help me, I have a spreadsheet that Loggy made that he pulled from Dominions. And by the way, this video was commissioned by one of my Patreon supporters, David Etheridge. So thank you for that. So yeah, let's get into it. So yeah, Loggy has made this spreadsheet, and we're going to filter on different things. So first, we're going to filter on siege strength. And how we're going to do it, we're going to talk about a little bit each of these. And then we're going to go to Dominions, and I'll pull up the stats of them, and we can kind of look at them, etc. So first up, most efficient siege strength per gem is carry-on reanimation, and this requires corpses in the province to work. If you have a lot of corpses, you're going to get a lot of solace, and those solace are very good at sieging, but they're not good at much else. They have a ton of... Well, they never heal after fights. They have crappy morale and MR and combat stats. They're basically just good for sieging and for patrolling. But anyway, that's carry-on reanimation. Next up, we have Great Eagles, which are, I would say, one of the better late-game siege chaff kind of units. They're nice because they're highly mobile, they're flying. They're hard to get in the sense that they take an Air 3 mage, which, you know, it could be a Fairy Queen in the late game or something like that, but... they're not great at combat, but they're not bad. Okay, and then next up we have the animal hordes. And Loggy has run this with the units you get from different places to cast. Underwater, you actually get the best siege strength. If you do it in a forest, you get pretty good, or in a swamp, you get okay. If you do it somewhere else, just like a plains, it's not nearly as good. It's like half as good as if you do it underwater, or in a highlands. It's really good too. I think in a highlands, you get more animal-type units. But anyway... this is animal hordes, not something you see much of, but pretty good. Another unit is cave grubs. These are accessible very early in the game. They're reasonably gem efficient. They take a fair number of mage turns, but they're very good at sieging. And these all, by the way, use different gem types. Like this is a good death gem sink, or it's an okay death gem sink. I'm not gonna say it's great. Air gem sink, nature gems, and then we have earth gems for the cave grubs. The thing for the cave grubs is you're going to need a cave. And then next up we have Army of the Dead. Army of the Dead is going to give you, I believe, a lot of long dead. We have Orgy, which is... This one's like infinite Manead free spawn. But I think even just the base spell, he has it ranked pretty high as siege strength. But this is really only relevant for late age Pythium. Celestial Servants. This is something you don't see get used very much by TNC, but apparently it's a very good way to turn gems into siege strength. And these are sacred units, so if you have a good bless, this could actually be a pretty decent value. I don't love Celestial Servants as units, but they're sacred and they have great siege strength. So what can we say? And then next up we have the Siege Golem. These things are great. They're construction 9. They're very hard to kill, so they're very durable siege chaff, right? They're not going to be as efficient as this stuff, but a lot of this stuff above here, a lot of this just dies, flames from the sky, or any battlefield wipe. This is just garbage animal chaff for the most part. Great Eagles are going to be more resistant to some of that stuff, but siege golems are great. They have magic attacks, they have shatter weapons, they're going to be good against thugs. Problem is they're mindless, so if you lose a battle, they will dissolve instead of run. And then we have cave cows, which again, you need a cave, but they're pretty solid. And we'll pull these up and look at them now and arouse hunger. So I've got these in a test game here. So we'll take a look at each of these things we just talked about. So this, up at the top, this is what you would get from Summon Animal Horde. I did these with Debug Sensei, so if it gets a bonus from additional magic pass, this will be reflected here, but... I believe we got all of this. We got the great lions, we got the wolves, we got the goats, we got the spoiders, and we got the birds, and we got the deer. All of that from Summon Animal Horde. So pretty good if you just want chaff. Great Eagles. This was a high level casting of Great Eagles. Normally you're not going to get that many. But if you look at them, they're pretty solid. They've got 50 something HP. They've got 2 decent attacks. Importantly, they have a siege bonus. And they have decent natural protection. You probably don't want them in combat. By the time you'll be getting probably a fair number of these, like late game, they're really not going to do great compared to other options you might have for actually, fighting. But they're very good siege chaff. Each one gives almost 17 siege strength. It's pretty intense. So that is the Great Eagle. The Siege Golem, you can see he's got 2 magic attacks, and then they, in addition to just being a high damage magic attack, they have Shatter, which is going to do 20 armor negating damage, but only to inanimates. So if there's something like a monolith there, these guys will tear a monolith up. But yeah, a very solid unit. They're mindless though, and so they dissolve after combat. They also are resistant to fire, and to cold, and to lightning. So they're pretty good, and they're pretty mobile. And they're poor amphibians. So all in all, a pretty good unit. This is your Cave Cow. They have Corrosive Spit, which will apply corrosion, which will dissolve armor. And in that sense, they're pretty useful because you can kind of put them in the back line, and then they can shoot at stuff and hopefully not die. They have a decent bag of HP. So they can kind of be useful more so than some other siege chaff options that you don't want to have actually engaging in melee. And then we have the Cave Grub, and these guys are pretty cool. So 50 HP, which is a lot. They're a magic being, which is not a good tag to have. They have a siege bonus of 10, which is a lot. So their siege strength per unit is almost 13. And they have this Corrosive Bite, which is a magic attack, so that's notable. And it's going to additionally wear away armor. So all in all, pretty solid unit. Especially if you can get some buffs on them, they do okay. But a lot of these things we haven't really talked about, but like a lot of these things have really bad magic resistance. Like these guys don't have good magic resistance. Basically, a lot of these we've looked at are animals. The eagles actually have good magic resistance, but all these things, the animal horde stuff, is garbage magic resistance. 5. Okay. I think there are some other things that are pretty good siege strength. This is another way to turn death gems into siege strength. You can get Aziz, and they're 18 siege strength per, but you only get 1 per instead of eagles. So if you look at like Aziz, it's 4 gems for one of those guys. But if we compare that to eagles, you get a lot more eagles, right? You get 5 for 8 gems. So you're already getting twice the bang for your buck, at least on the eagles. The difference is that Aziz has a fear aura and a chill aura, so he's kind of cool. He also has some resistances like shock resistance, so he's cool. I dig them, but anyway, that is the Ziz. They also have storm immunity, which is kind of cool. Okay, so I think that's that part. I don't know how far down here I want to go. Yeah, wolves are okay for siege strength. They're not great. Highland plus Waste, Okami, Vineman. Yeah, I think this is as far down as we're going to go. We also have here a siege defense per gem. I don't think this is much different, but the best thing we have still is Animal Horde, even though animals get a big malice for siege defense. Celestial Servant's actually very good for this. You can see it's much closer. Like, so animals were way better in terms of siege defense. I mean, in terms of siege strength. Like, look at this. See, they're way better than Celestial Servants here, but they're only a little bit better here. And that's because they basically get a half malice for being an animal. Yeah. And so we're not going to spend a lot of time talking on this because it's mostly the same as this, except animals get a malice. Mazikim's a kind of cool spell. You basically get a bunch of little winged critters that are usually pretty good patrol chaff and other things. We are going to skip right over, though, to the patrol strength per gem. And this is really important. By the way, these red lines are if it's a national spell. So if it's not red, then it's generic. So condors, by the way, completely win the game of patrol strength per gem. I mean, they're also very good at sieging, but in terms of patrolling, they're just unparalleled. The Smeargle, let me pause, and I'm going to pull up a Smeargle real quick. Okay, so this is a Smargle, or however you say it. And it's a summon only for the Rusian nations. And it's not very mage turn efficient, because it's, going to take you're basically getting one per mage turn, but they are great at patrolling. They've got a 10 patrol bonus in addition to being flying. So very good patrollers. That said, they're a unit, so they'll still need a commander to patrol with them. But all in all, I would say a very solid summon. And that's the Samargle. The Watcher, these are pretty good. I've used these a few times. I'll pull up here in Dominions. We've got a Watcher. What's really nice about these, so they're great at patrolling. They're immobile, which is not good. But they have a lightning attack. So they're very good at helping you deal with thugs, because this adds just another threat vector for if thugs are going to raid into you, they have to be able to deal with a Watcher shooting 10 lightning bolts at them, and then they have to be able to kill a Watcher, which some thugs would struggle to do. So all in all, I like Watchers a good bit. The problem with Watchers is you need a lab in the province you're blood hunting in to produce one of these guys. So anyway, that's a problem. And it's a weird cross path. It's hard to cast. You have to be, I think, Air 3, Earth 1, which is not easy, and not many nations have access to dudes with that. So that's the Watcher. Hall of Statues, this is an Agartha spell, a very good spell, but also apparently these guys have a patrol bonus, so they are tippy top in terms of patrol efficiency, which, I mean, these are sacred high tier statues. I wouldn't really think you would want to use them for patrolling, but you can. Army of Dead, also excellent for patrolling. In general, a lot of these death spells are going to be very good for patrolling. We can see reanimations up here 5. The difference between something here, like 9.2 for Great Eagles is really good, but, coming down here, Army of the Dead, it's 7 gems. I mean, it's 7 patrol strength per gem. If you compare that to normal reanimation, it's only 5. And I'm pretty sure, we can check it again, I'm pretty sure you get, this is what you get from Army of the Dead. It's basically just a bunch of these guys, and it actually gave me all the crappiest versions. I don't know if it's going to do that every time. I've actually hardly ever cast this spell. It is a remote spell, which is kind of nice. Are these all spears too? Oh, it looks like it's giving you all of one type. I wonder if you can get all of a good type. What I think you also may get for this, and I can't remember how we did it in the spreadsheet. Yeah, you can get Soulless too. So what we're going to do, I'm going to do Black Death real quick and make some corpses. And then we'll do Army of the Dead. Okay, and yeah, we got some Soulless too. So in this case, yeah, you're always going to get the same type. So in this case, we got actually armored ones with a broadsword, and then we got an additional amount of Soulless. In my opinion, Soulless are complete garbage. I would almost never spend gems on getting Soulless. Even down here, you can see this was from casting Carry-On Reanimation, which only gives you Soulless, but yuck. No, thank you. They're just too bad in combat. Anyway. That is reanimation and whatnot. Carry-On Reanimation. Let me make sure I'm not telling y'all wrong things about Carry-On Reanimation. It is... Carry-On Reanimation. Okay, here it is. Let's read it real quick. Yeah, Unburied. Up to 100 bodies. Yeah. So if you cast it, like we have no corpses here, if we cast it here and we don't have anything, you're not going to get anything. Yeah, we got this guy with nobody under his command. So that's Carry-On Reanimation. Airmorian Legion, basically the same deal as these. Animal Horde down here for patrol strength, they're not bad. They're pretty good. I mean, a lot of these are better than Call of the Winds. Notably, the best Animal Horde is Highlands for both. And I think that's because you're going to be getting... let's actually see if we can cast that. I'm not actually sure what we get in Highlands. I don't know if we have any here. This looks like a Highlands. Excellent. This honestly is not a spell I have... Why can't I move here? This honestly is not a spell I've cast much in game. Animal Horde. Though I think after doing this video, I'll be able to think of times where I want to cast it. It's definitely... Having really low quality chaff is usually not... Especially that's not free spawn. If it was free spawn, it would be different. But you have to pay for every little unit you get. And eventually they're going to get wrecked. Yeah, so we get a lot of birds is the secret. Oh, and fall bears. So birds, bears, and wolves. That's pretty good. Bears are really good. And then birds, these have a patrol strength of 1 per. The bears have a patrol strength of 0.7. The birds would have more, but they're an animal, so they're getting a debuff. And the wolves. So I can definitely... And like the bears, you have to be really careful if you're fighting an Astral or Nature Nation in the late game with these guys. But, you know, they're definitely good bulky chaff to beef up the line if you're not worried about the MR problem. So, anyway, but what is interesting here is Animal Horde was this is the worst Animal Horde for siege strength, but it's a pretty good Animal Horde for patrol strength. Call the Winds. This gives you basically a bunch of those black birds, and this is a reasonably efficient patrol strength. One problem with this is, like a lot of the animals, they're undisciplined, and they tend to just run into combat and die. And that's something to mention here for a lot of these. It's exaggerated with these birds because the birds are undisciplined, so they run in and die like right away. You can't even put them behind your PD or something. But a lot of this animal chaff we're looking at, if you're going to be using it for patrolling, if you get raided, a lot of times it's going to run to the front and die, and not somehow preserve itself and stay for the next combat. I mean, you can't even script it to retreat if you wanted to. You know, I honestly use Pack of Wolves a fair amount, and that just gives you a sense, like, this is a spell I use a lot, and a lot of these are better than this for patrol strength. Though Pack of Wolves gets a lot of credit for being very easy to cast. It only takes you Nature 1 to cast it, which is really nice compared to some of these other options. And some of these are much higher, like Pale Riders is a very high-level spell. Or not very, it's a pretty high-level spell. You don't get it super duper early. I can't remember exactly when you get it. But yeah, and then Ziz is down here. Ziz is pretty good at patrolling. Not super mage turn efficient to get these, but you get a fair amount of siege strength. And Ziz actually is good. Like, if you have him patrolling rather than wolves, which they have about the same patrol strength per gem, he's actually going to mess up a lot of thugs or raiders or what have you. And if you ever need to use them to siege, it's going to be good in a pinch. But a lot of this is going to depend, like, what's expensive to you right now. Like, are gems what you want to optimize and, like, being able to defend against thug raids? You know, if that's the case, this might be good. But if you care more about mage turns, you're going to want one of these spells, which is going to cost a lot of gems. Like, all the animal hordes cost a lot. The carry-on reanimation costs a lot. So, like, when we were comparing any of these, like, Army of the Dead uses 10 gems, but reanimation uses 3. But this is way more mage turn efficient to cast Army of the Dead, is what I'm getting at. So yeah, that is that. So what are the main takeaways from this? There's a lot of animals which are pretty good at either sieging or patrolling. A lot of it is garbage in terms of how it fights in combat, but as we can see, we got some bears which are pretty decent in combat with Animal Horde. We can actually see what you get underwater. I'm curious. Let's see what we get underwater. And Animal Horde. Where are you? Cannot be cast underwater. Oh, that was weird because he had it listed underwater. I wonder if there's something I'm missing. I don't see anything. Oh, well, we'll figure that out later. But anyway, takeaways. Animals can be very good siege and patrol strength and patrol chaff, but they tend to die really easily because they're undisciplined, and a lot of them, like fly in and die. Carry-on reanimation gives you soulless, which are kind of garbage. Great Eagles really stand out as being mobile, good at besieging and patrolling, and in addition, they aren't undisciplined. You can script them. They have good MR. Those are pretty good, and I've used Great Eagles a decent amount. Yeah, Watchers are great, but hard to use. But I think that the main thing is there's a lot of options. To say this is the best or this is the worst, it depends what you need and what you're worried about, right? If you have a lot of nature gems, you do the nature stuff. If you have a lot of death gems, you do the death stuff. If you're, depending on how heavily you're getting rated or how heavily that particular province is probably going to get rated, will probably change the kind of thing you're going to use. I mean, you could even use reanimate archers, which is pretty decent. These guys have banefire bows. So there's a decent number of options. By the time we scroll down here, we're getting to like 1.5. A lot of these aren't super useful, but anyway. That's basically it for the spreadsheet. What I want to show you now are just some things we haven't talked about, but things which are pretty good in terms of combat, right? So one thing, and this is a late game kind of gem sync, is Legion of Whites. And we'll show you that spell right here. This is Conjuration 9, so you can't get it till really late. But it's, in my opinion, a pretty good death gem sync. You have to be Death 6 to cast it. It costs 30 gems, and you get 20 and then extra for each level you are over Death 6, which probably is not going to be many, if any. But you're going to get a bunch of these guys. And they are great. They have magic weapons. They have high protection. They have good MR. They're amphibious. And not only a magic weapon, I mean, they have a Bane Blade, right? So, I mean, if you just translate, this is basically, like a Bane Blade costs 5 gems, and you're getting a lot of Bane Blades plus the chassis. The problem with these guys is wither bones, basically. It's the problem. So if you're going up against things that can wither bones you can have a lot of death gems deleted real quick, but if you're not, they're going to be very resistant to flames from the sky, and, they're completely immune to murdering winter, so you don't have to worry about those nukes. They're a very good unit, and they have magic weapons. They're just great. Yeah, so they're a good thing to consider. Another unit probably worth considering is fire snakes. If you have a lot of fire gems and you want to turn them into units, these are actually pretty solid. Probably only want to get them if you have heat skills because they have firepower. You'll see these, honestly, players don't get them that often, but you'll see them on Indie Thrones a fair amount, and they actually can mess you up. They have heat auras, so that can be pretty good to mix in as a threat vector. They have good MR, which is unlike a lot of things which are animals. So these are like high MR animals. They have Fire Flare, which is an area of effect attack, which means if you're fighting elves or something, this can be really good. Especially if, I was going to say you give a strength buff to them, but they don't actually benefit from that. But anyway, if it's like 5 fire resistance elves, this will be very good at getting rid of glamour and stuff. Or just anything that's high defense. And then in addition, they have venomous fangs. So I'm gonna break my keyboard. So anyway, that's pretty good. I think these guys are. We'll pull up the spell corresponding to them. I think they're a pretty good all-around unit for combat. Fire snakes, yeah, they're almost 1 per gem, and they're not terribly hard to cast. They're only fire 2. The other thing, there's a bunch of like for fire, there's summer lions. I don't love summer lions. For earth, there's fall bears. For winter, there's winter wolves. And I wonder what there's for spring. Spring hawks is what they are. These are the seasonal critters. And if we look at each of them, let's take a look at the cost before we go and pull these up. So we have the summer lions, you pay 20 gems, you get 5. For air, you pay 20 gems, you get 5. For earth, you pay 12 gems and you get 5. And for, was that all of them? Oh, for winter wolves, it's 8 gems and you get 5. So you get 5 from each of the casts, but let's take a look at them. So the winter wolves, you can see they each get the strength of their various season, which they get more hit points. And I think their strength goes up. These are notable for being, I think all of these are ethereal. That's one thing common to this whole little line of units. Frost Breath, which is 9 armor piercing frost damage, which can be nice, and a bite. If you're watching the tournament series, Zabalba used these a fair bit. They're pretty decent at spreading chill aura. If your opponent doesn't have cold resistance, the Frost Breath and the chill aura is going to be nice. They have 0 protection and not much hit points. So especially if something has magic weapons, they'll cut these things to pieces. But if they don't have magic weapons, they can be an okay but temporary, because they'll get killed chaff. Fall bears are different. Fall bears are actually very interesting. They're ethereal. They have no protection, but they have ethereal and regen and a big HP pool. And that makes them actually very, very tanky. They're not super killy. I mean, they have a pretty high damage attack, but they're very, very good at tanking stuff. And they also have poison resistance, which is kind of nice. They're mindless, so if you leave them after combat, they're going to die. But if you need something to hold a wall, these definitely go on the list of things that are reasonable to summon. And again, a lot of this has to do with, like, you know, what kind of gems do you have? But if I recall, these were only 12 gems to get 5. You can see we got more than 5 because we're casting with like a level 9 Earth Mage. But anyway, pretty good. The lions, these are now very expensive. They're 20 gems, so 8 more per casting than the Earth Bears, and you don't get a ton more. They're more killy. They have twice the attacks of the bear. They are also ethereal, but they don't have regen. And so when you say, like, what are and they have a heat aura, which is nice, but if you say, like, what are these things going to do exceptionally well? I mean, they don't hit hard enough where I would really want them fighting a ton. And they don't have magic weapons or anything. I don't know. I feel like the Summer Lions I don't love a lot. You could get them and nobody would laugh at you, but I'm not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan. And the Springhawks, everybody's familiar with these in Thrones. They're a little bit like the Winter Wolves in that, except they're expensive. I think they're a great unit. They would see a lot of use. They're just so expensive, guys. The Springhawks are 20 gems for 5. And it's kind of one of those units you would want to love. And they're so annoying to fight against. Like, they're really good against thugs that are not going to have lightning resistance. But they die so easily. That said, they have really high attack, really high defense, and they're ethereal. So if the things you're fighting don't have magic weapons, you know, they can also fly in storm, and they have storm immunity, so that's kind of cool. But I don't know. I mean, they can kill easily a 20 gem thug that doesn't have shock resistance. So there's that. I mean, that's very high attack, but if you use these, it's probably very situational, and you're not going to want to make a ton of them. You're going to make them for when you want them. But all of these can be pretty good in combat. Nobody's going to laugh at you if you get any of those in your army. Okay, so we've talked through those. We talked through the fire spirits. The Yeti, I think, are also deserve an honorable mention. They are right here. Water 2, air 1. 13 gems gives you 5. So You're getting about the same number per cast as you are with these critters here. They're notable for a few things. One is they have very high strength and they have a sticks and stones attack. So they're actually pretty solid range units. They'll throw 2 snowballs per round till they get rid of all their ammo, and then they'll run in and hit people with their big rock. And they have a lot of HP. They have okay MR. They have some protection. They're all in all a pretty good unit. And what's nice is they use water gems. So if you need a good water gem sink and you have water air mages, I think these are a pretty solid choice. They're a pretty solid choice. They also have a chill aura, which can be pretty nice if you're fighting in cold. But all in all, I like Yetis. The thing is, it's a little tricky to cast. Like, you need that water air cross path. The Ziz is great. We talked about them. They're not very mage turn efficient. It's going to take you a lot of mage turns, but they're high quality units. They can fly in storms. They've got shock resistance. They've got cold resistance. They've got poison resistance. They've got a siege bonus and fear and a lot of HP. Yeah, they're pretty good. And a patrol bonus. They're just good units. What can I tell you? We've already talked about the Watcher. All right. For units you can summon, they've buffed or nerfed, I guess, the cost. They've increased the cost of Green Lions. It used to be, I think you got them for 2 gems, and it's an alteration spell, if I recall. Yeah, it used to be 2 gems, and they made it 3. But they are one of the summons which I would say is very good all around, except they're not mage turn efficient. So here's the way that I think to think about these guys, is they can kill thugs. We'll talk about why right now. They've got this vitriol breath, and this is area of effect 1, so you can't dodge it. Like, you can't arrow offend it or anything. It's a ranged attack. They have 7 ammunition. If they get hit, you'll get corroded, and it's 16 magical armor piercing damage. That is a lot. This will mess up thugs. Like, 3 or 4 of these guys will just destroy almost any thug that they get to sit there and pound on while they're surrounded by PD. Like 10 of these will delete most super combatants. I mean, they're really good to have mixed into an army as kind of like a special forces. That said, actually they're going to compare in terms of, they're not very mage turn efficient, like I was saying, but they'll compare pretty well to like Summer Lions. You know, they, I think, are just almost strictly superior except for the mage turn thing. They're a really good unit. Still totally worth getting at 3 water gems per. However, they're expensive enough and they're slow enough to get. They're not going to, like, you know, fill out the roster of your army. However, they will be a very good supplement. They'll make it harder to cheese your army, and they're just good in combat. They'll almost always do 3 gems worth of damage over the course of a long fight, even if they do end up dying. Also, they have excellent MR. And they're ethereal, which is real nice. Okay, what have we not covered? I think we've covered most of the things. There's some other stuff which, let me see. There's a whole probably slew of things underwater. I know the monster fish can be pretty good underwater, though they have really bad MR. Yeah, the Sea King's Court is a pretty decent summon. You get a bunch of trolls, and you get a Water 3 troll mage. The Earth King, I'm not going to go through all the mages, because that would be like a whole nother thing. But these also give a lot of units, and these are pretty good. The problem is these all the trolls cost upkeep. A lot of upkeep, too. Hill Giants aren't horrible, and Ogres aren't horrible. Ogres are actually pretty decent siege strength. You get... let's go back to our chart real quick. Let's figure out where the Ogres are. They're probably somewhere up here towards the top. Okay, Forest Giant is not bad. 3 per. And these guys... yeah, and these guys are going to do pretty okay in combat. They can definitely hold their own, and they're not likely to die, unless there's a lot of MR target stuff, because they're a big bag of HP. Where the hell are my Ogres? 1 second. Ogre. Okay, these guys not quite as good. So the Hill Giants are actually a fair bit better. Ogres... 1.6 strength, siege strength per, but they're okay in combat. We'll go ahead and summon them real quick. if you're like I think one thing is like, don't obsess too much about the cost or the efficiency. If you're especially if you're in a desperate spot, like people are running at you, you're getting coalitioned or something, like just get whatever you can. Like if there's not something immediate coming up on the horizon for research that's going to totally turn things around, take all those gems and mage turns and convert it into power. And like these guys hit really hard. They have a great club, hits for 29 damage. They don't have good MR. But they have a decent pool of HP and they're pretty okay at sieging. You know, if you, like, okay, are these as efficient as animals at sieging? No. But like a thug will murder, like one thug could kill all your animals, or they could die to a battlefield wipe, or this, that, or the other. Meanwhile, the ogre will be a contributing member of your army, hitting for very hard. Of course, depending on, you know, he's got really bad MR, but he's got really high strength. So like stuff like a vine shield, he'll get wrapped up, he'll break free. Occasionally he'll hit. Especially if you can get anti-magic on him. What are the summons? I haven't gone through any of the blood summons. The thing, we'll talk about them real quick though. For blood, you basically have a few different kinds of blood summons. You get spine devils, which are hard to mass. You only get one spine devil per cast, but they're pretty good units. Basically, all the devils type of things you can get early are pretty good. They're just not mage turn efficient. And the thing is, when you're dealing with blood mages, like the guy who would be summoning this, they could potentially be blood hunting, making you more blood slaves. So the actual cost of a devil is actually way higher than 7, because it's like 7 plus the expected blood return of 1 mage. So that's kind of the problem. You don't see a lot of people summoning many of these things early. Bind Devil, Forest Fiend, Storm Demon, Bind Demon Knight. These are all great units, but they're just not very mage turn efficient. If they, let's say, doubled the nominal cost and doubled the number of units you get, all of a sudden you would probably start seeing them a lot more in games. But as it is, you don't. Bone Fiends are pretty good. It's a Fiend of Darkness. Those are also really good. Okay, here we are. Bone Fiends. These are pretty efficient siege chaff. I don't think they're listed on that thing, but they might be. But you basically are going to get 5 of them for 5 blood slaves. We'll summon them actually real quick. Because they're kind of cool units. You get 5 of them, or more depending on your level, but they have no protection, so they really desperately need a protection buff, but they're decently killy. They have a decent amount of HP. They have pierce resistance. They're fine. The thing is, for a lot of the actual blood unit summons, you're not really going to want to do them until you get down to blood 9, when you can start getting them with these spells like Infernal Forces, Infernal Tempest. Where's the... I don't know why I can't see the one for the Fiends. Oh, Forces of Darkness. This gives you Fiends of Darkness. These will all give you different amounts, like Infernal Tempest. It gives you Storm Demons, which are some of the best demons, but you only get 7. And if you compare that to Forces of Darkness, you get 14. If you compare it to Infernal Crusade, you get 10. These guys are pretty good. They all have Fear Aura. So all these units are good, and now it actually makes sense because they're way more mage turn efficient. So these are all legit things if you have the paths to cast them later, if we're talking about blood. So what are the takeaways? I think the takeaways are you can turn almost any gem type you want to into patrol and siege chaff, some with more efficiency than others. And a lot of times it's going to you're going to have to pay a currency in mage turns, and it's either going to be cheap or expensive, so that's something to think about. But I think the takeaways are, Animal Horde's pretty efficient, but it's also a little garbage. There's a lot of options for turning death gems into siege and patrol strength. There's pretty good options for air with the Great Eagle. And then there's a bunch of different things you can do that are, like in the middle ground for things that are good in combat and good at sieging, like ogres or, like fall bears, or, even the lions are pretty good siege strength. But yeah, there's a bunch of different things you can get. Yetis are good siege strength. I think what I'll try to do, I'll go ahead and put this file on my Google Drive, and I'll put a link to it in the description so y'all can browse through it. But anyway, hope you enjoyed. And yeah, see you guys next time.